missed the boat altogether. He said that if we are going to parent our children thinking that the way that we have been parent, then we would have missed the boat. Because in the year 2000 and beyond, they're going to live in a different world. They're going to live in the world of Facebook, which Pastor Suresh says that many of us still do not seem to understand. My father is 95 years old. If I tell him now that I have upgraded my computer to a 200 gig memory, in fact, I told him that, he looked at me and said, "Son, I don't know what you're talking about, except that I'm losing my memory." Because the terminology that is being used before and today is different. If you want to parent our children thinking that the way that we have been parent is probably the most effective way, we would have missed the boat, Alvin Toffler was saying. And therefore, how do we now adjust to the world of our children? I've got a Facebook account, but honestly, I only have about 3 or 4 people who likes me, and that's my family. Because I usually don't share. You know, people say, "Can I like you?" I would usually not respond and all that. And the reason why I'm on Facebook, honestly, is because my children are on Facebook, and if I want to express some thoughts when I'm traveling, that is the best platform for me to do so. If I see a particular situation that has drawn me emotionally, I felt that the Facebook would be a best time for me to say, this is what I'm going through, this is the happy moment, this is a sad moment, this is a challenging moment, and they would read my Facebook, pray for me, and understand what I'm going through, without me paying a cent for it, of course. So Alvin Toffler says we need to respond to what we are faced today as parents. Because when you look at our generation today, I call them the 3-screen generations. They are under the mobile screen, the computer screen, and the television screen. I don't know how many of you read, I think it was on the 9th of September, 2013, there was this article called "I Control iPhone." It was a story of a 3-year-old boy who was addicted to the iPhone. Why? Because the parents, each time when they were to go for dinner or go outing or go places, they would hand him that iPhone. And he would be playing with that iPhone. Some of you are nodding because you have seen this happening in many restaurants, right? In fact, sometimes the whole family would be either on the iPhone or on the iPad. I'm just wondering why they can't do it at home. You know, they have to do it in the restaurant. So this child has been given the iPhone at any point of time when he is misbehaving. He would have the iPhone in front of him. He will play with the games. When he goes home, he will have the iPhone with him. So much, he actually became addicted to the phone. Soon after that, the mother or the grandmother of the child came into the scene because she was visiting from outstation. By the way, this is a PJ case, all right, a Petaling Jaya case. The mother came from outstation, visited the family, and told the son, "Son, I don't think this is good as far as what I can see is happening. Your child, your boy is being addicted to the iPhone." So the father was a bit concerned, but there was nothing they could do because each time when they take the phone away, he begins to cry. He won't have his dinner and all that. So much so that the mother, the grandmother in this case, said that, "You know what, I think you guys need to really go away as husband, wife, and the child and do something about it. But I want you all to go away without any iPhone or phones or mobile phones, including the parents." So the son took the advice and went away for a 1-week holiday without taking the phone with him, neither the phone for the son. So can you imagine what happened? On the first day, the child was just screaming, not having his meal. It was like cold turkey, honestly speaking. It was cold turkey. For the 2 days, it was literally hell for the parents. The kids don't know what to do. They were about to drive home to get the phone, but each time when they call home, the mom said, "Don't come home. Continue to deprive him of the phone, including yourself." In fact, I think the mom asked him, "Are you also crying?" I don't think he did that. But the report tells us further that by the 3rd day, the child began to get used to it. Even though he cried, it was not as intensive. And by the 7th day, he was very comfortable. And then they began to go home, whereby now the phone doesn't become an issue with him anymore. You know, sometimes because of the 3-screen generation, we can become so addicted to the phone. I'm going to talk a little bit more in our seminar this afternoon on how it's actually affecting our children today. Look at the games they play. They play with the Wii, they play with the iPad, they play with computers that are multi-screens. You know, one screen is not enough. They need to have 2 or 3 screens so that they can follow one after another, right? Have you all seen that before? Where they are so addicted to the screen and looking at the screen, literally what Save the Children call, children today are under solitary pastime. They are passing the time solitarily. That means by themselves. And therefore, it is no wonder that young people today have struggled actually looking at you sometimes eye to eye. They find that it's difficult to look at you because they are so used to looking at the screen. I've got parents who tell me that my son is not looking to me when they are talking to me. I say, what you need to do, therefore, is cut out the frame of a computer and put it in front of you when you talk to your child. Then maybe he begin to respond to you a little bit more because he's more familiar with the screen than with you without the computer screen. They are living and playing the games that are so different from us. Whereas the games that we play were quite different. The baby boomers, all right? Maybe some of our Y generation as well, where we actually play with games that are highly interactive and outdoor. We play with friends that we think about interaction, we talk about social environment, but now they are by themselves. We play with games called Gundi Gunda. How many of you remember that game? Gunda Gundi, Gundi Gunda, some of you do. It's a long stick and a short stick where you play outside. Do you remember that? You dig a little hole, you got two teams, and then you use the short stick to place across the hole. Then you use the long stick to flick the stick, and the other team is supposed to catch that little stick. And if they fail to catch the little stick, where the stick drops, you begin to use the long stick to measure the distance from that small stick to the hole, and you get the number of points. Do you remember that? Those of you who do? Maybe you should maybe you should play the game during family day, Pastor Suresh. I dig a little bit hole here. But those kind of games involves interaction, right? Whereas our young people today, even if they play with Gunda Gundi, they probably will be using the iPhone to do it. The way they communicate, they use Twitter, they use Facebook, they use Instagram. When I was telling my father, I said, you know, there's this thing called Instagram. He said, you're talking about Maggie Mee? Because the latest instant noodles that he has, the latest word associated with instant is probably the instant noodle. They use Tumblr, all right? Those are the way our young people communicate today. So are we saying that, no, I'm not going to engage myself in all these? Then we will miss the boat altogether. That's what Alvin Toffler is trying to say. But at the same time, I'm not saying that we should be consumed and at the same time be addicted to some of these things, which many of the young people are actually doing that. In fact, sometimes in our office, I got to caution the staff, hey, the money that we receive at Focus on the Family is blood money. People are donating for the ministry, and therefore the time that we have in our office, can I just make sure that none of you go on Facebook or just go on your blogs, on website browsing and all that, and let's make sure that we spend our time wisely. Whereas the way we communicate is very different, isn't it? I remember taking my children when they have written a letter to their cousins in Singapore. After they have written the letter, I asked them to put it into an envelope. Then I asked them to put some saliva on the envelope so that they can seal it. Then I'll take them to the post office and buy a stamp. Then they will use more saliva to put on the stamp so that they can stick the stamp on the envelope. Then they take the envelope and take it to the red box, called the post box, and drop it in. How many of us have actually done it with our young children? Praise God, there are some who are still living in sanity. You know, but many of us would have not done it because we don't seem to have to do it. All you need now is to do the email. And friends, isn't it true that sometimes we have become so Google-based, internet-based, rather than Bible-based? Sometimes we have worn out the keypads in our computer rather than the knee pad on our knees. Sometimes we have not turned to God, but we have turned to Google and asked Him for advice and asked Google for help. And yet the Bible is so readily for us. God is always there. He said He's a friend that stays closer than a brother. How do we actually communicate today? We prefer a face-to-face meeting rather than we go on Skyping, or we just say that we do a conference call via the internet. I find it extremely difficult. I don't know about you. Without that human touch, without that physical presence of one another, communication is somehow rather different, isn't it? You know, in this day and age, sometimes I do have to communicate with people regularly from another part of the world. And somehow it is different compared to the time when I am there face to face, when I can feel and I can see and I can read the body language. Because many people who have done study on communication have said that 55% of our communication is our body language. 38% is the tone of our voice. And only 7% is actually the content of the communication. How can you read a body language effectively over the internet? How can you hear the tone? I guess you can type exclamation mark, capital letters if you are angry, right? That's what it is. Am I right? When you are typing capital letters means you are really angry. But it still is not the same when you are expressing the tone, okay? And therefore, the face-to-face encounter is so important. Many of us believe that when we were communicating, you need to be doing things together. When you do things together, there is so much more effective object lessons that you can actually share with your children as compared to just sending via email. I remember I was helping my son when he was much younger, after his Form 5. My son, he's an architect today, and he really likes to use his hands, you know, he likes to build things and all that. So he said, after Form 5, Dad, I'd like to build a robot. So I said, okay, what do you plan to use to build the frame of the robot? He said, I want to use some wires, and he likes to collect things. So he has collected a lot of the old cloth hangers from my wife, the thicker ones, and he has been putting it into this huge box. And after his Form 5, I remember working this together with him, use the cloth hanger to make the shape of a man. But after making the shape of a man, I realized that that shape of a man with the cloth hanger wire was unable to stand by itself. It was just very flimsy because it was like maybe about 5 foot tall. So he wasn't able to stand. And he said, Dad, how am I going to make this robot stand up for a start before we fix in other things? I said, well, I'm an engineer by training. I said, let me now work on the foundation. I said, the foundation has got to be right. I said, right now, the feet that you have created is too flimsy. So what I did was I took an old pair of his shoes, an old pair of shoes of his, and then nearby there was some construction that was going on. So I took some cement and sand, borrowed from them, or rather took from them at night when they were not there. Took it home the next day, mixed some water with the cement and sand, and then I slid the feet of that wire into the shoe. Are you all following me? And then after that, I poured the cement and sand into the shoe, so that after when the cement and sand solidify, it becomes a stable structure with weight. And after that, the robot was standing by itself. And I used that as an object lesson. I said, son, what happens in life is that the foundation is so important. When the Bible says train a child when he is young, if you look at the definition of the word young, it's actually before he reaches puberty. Train a child when he is young. It didn't say train a child when he's 25, when he's an adult. Why? The foundation is extremely important. Friends, I know some of our children, when they reach teenage years, they seem to have gone wayward. Adult years, they seem to have gone wayward. But during those young age of their life, you have done all you could to lay the foundation. And I believe, friends, that you have done that, God will honor you, and the child will come back to the Lord. Because I've seen many, many cases, even in my own church, on how people have gone wayward during the teenage years, but after they entered into the adult years, because of the foundation that they had, they turned back to the Lord. Let's communicate with them by doing things together with our children. No apologies. Some of you may be familiar with this program that Focus on the Family does with young people. It is a character-based sexual abstinence program. We have done a survey, and we found out that an average teenager spends 50 hours a week on media exposure. All right? At the same time, Dr. Paul Jambunadan, some of you would have heard of his name, he has done a survey on how much time a father in the Klang Valley spends with the children on a weekly basis. Guess how much time? Make a guess. Sorry? How many hours a week? It is 3 minutes a day. So when your son comes home from school saying that I want a pair of Nike while you're wearing your bata and your fong kiong, it's not because of your influence. It's because of the influence of the 50 hours of media. Friends, if our children are spending so much time on the media and being exposed by the media, who is influencing our children? Who is bringing up our children? Who is imparting values to our children? Unfortunately, it's not us. It is the media. If that is the statistics that confronts us, I was told by the No Apologies team, actually this is an outdated survey. It has gone to 68 hours. You know how many hours are there in a week, by the way? It's 168 hours. All right? 168 hours, 68 hours they are spending on media exposure. Who is influencing our children? Our children today, I believe, are getting more and more desensitized with violence, with sex, and science fiction. In fact, there are many research.